the times I've done promises that I had nightmares along the way. I made prayers in vain. I've waited so long to catch my breath. I'm awake, I'm alive. You made me who I am now. Never mind, I survived. Time after time. Through the pain I feel, through the hate in me, it goes on and on again. Enjoy the ride while you're alive and scream, never mind. So many fights for nothing at all. So many problems never solved, yeah. I saw people with fear in their eyes, into a world falling apart. I've waited so long to catch my breath. I'm awake, I'm alive. You made me who I am now. Never mind, I survived. Time after time. Through the pain I feel, through the hate in me, it goes on and on again. Enjoy the ride while you're alive and scream, never mind. I've waited so long to catch my breath. I've waited so long to catch my breath. To catch my enjoy the ride while you're alive and scream, never mind. I'm awake, I'm alive. You made me who I am now. Never mind, I survived. Time after time. Through the pain I feel, through the hate in me, it goes on and on again. Enjoy the ride while you're alive and scream, never mind.
Killer Voices. Hello, my pack, my tribe. Welcome to my new show, Killer Voices. So, I'm going to be very clear about this, because normally I'm just going to launch into story time on the show, but since this is the first episode of a new show, I wanted to do a little introduction. Tonight we are covering a very famous case, the case of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. This is based on a profile that I myself did, that I believe covers some things that may have been missed in the original. I mean, a ton of shit was missing in the original investigation, to be honest. It was pretty much bumbled from the start. But I'm including things in this profile that have not been considered before. I'm pretty sure. I don't really have access to profile information, but it's my guess that this hasn't been covered before. And without further ado, here we go. I sat in this crummy little diner, took a window seat, drank some coffee and smoked a cigarette, watching the crowd gather down the street. So excited I can feel my heart pounding as the crowd gathers to admire my masterpiece. My mind drifts back to weeks before. My muse, following her around town, turned out to be quite a chore. A woman could not sit still. Places like out front of the Brown Derby in the City of Angels. Places like the Cecil Hotel. The Greyhound station even. That one scratched my head. The hell was she doing there? She wasn't leaving town. But nonetheless, been following her for weeks, watching her, gathering inspiration for my masterpiece. And then the time came. I saw her go into the Cecil Hotel, and I pulled up my car and waited. She came out. I said, "Hey, I've seen you before, right?" She says, yeah, I think so. I said, "You're an actress, right?" She's like, "Yeah." Huh. You ever consider doing any modeling? I'm a artist myself. I'd be willing to pay you. Sounds good. Well, hop in. My breath almost caught in that moment, waiting for her response. But she did get in. So I took her someplace private, where we wouldn't be bothered. See, I had always been absolutely fascinated by the artist Man Ray. So this is my homage to him. I gave her a drink with a little something to relax her. And then I went to work. Told her to lay down on this table. And she did. I start taking pictures just to put her at ease. Until the drugs take effect. Took about 15-20 minutes. But when they kick in, ooh boy, do they kick in. And then I took out my instrument of creation. Looking down at my hand, admiring how it catches the light. And I turned her into my masterpiece. She had such a pretty smile, so I gave her an even prettier one. And then I mimicked the heart of Man Ray. She didn't even scream when I cut her in half. I wrapped her in canvas after she bled out. And then put her in the trunk of my car. Put her in this empty field across from where I now sit. Heart pounding. Can barely hold back my excitement, knowing that soon the world would be admiring my masterpiece. I put her in this empty field where she would be noticed. I wrote on her body in her own lipstick. And then I went to the diner, kind of catty corner from the field, sat by the window and waited. Watched out that window as the admirers came and looked over the body. Everyday people, newspaper reporters with their cameras, and then the police finally show up to break up the scene. Sat there and watched as they were scratching their heads clueless. Funny thing, they'll never get it. They're too rigid, too regimented. I watched as the coroner finally came and took away my masterpiece. And then I went home, waited for the newspapers to come out the next day to see if any of them would get it. Checked every paper in town. The LA Times was the closest, I think, but none of them got it. How could they? People never understand genius right away. It takes time. Time I had a ton of. See, what they don't understand, though, is there's been many pieces of art that I've done all over town. But this was my masterpiece. They don't even know who I am. Such is the sacrifice of the artist, I guess. And keep watching and waiting, thinking that someday, very soon, some boys in blue are going to be knocking down my door. But they don't. I wait and I wait. Nobody ever comes. What's a guy gotta do to get attention around here? Well, maybe I'll move on. Maybe I'll create another piece of art. Who knows? I watch and I wait. Waiting for the cops to get a clue. But they don't. I even consider writing into the newspapers and give them a little hint. But in the end, I don't. If they don't get it, well, it doesn't matter. It's not for them anyways. It's for the adoring public. So, I get tired of waiting. I go out and go shopping. get some groceries, some other stuff, just to bide my time. I'm starting to get a little annoyed at how stupid the cops are at this point. But I'm not going to help them along. They aren't worth my time. Of course, it got out that they think I'm somebody else. That guy was guilty of some stuff, that's for sure, because he fled town pretty quick. Dr. George Hodel. But no, not me. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Guess I'll live a quote-unquote normal life and see what happens. Here we are. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months into years. Still nobody's busting down my door. Like I said, they just don't get it. Do you? That, ladies and gents, is my profile of the killer responsible for Elizabeth Short and several others, by the way. Little history lesson for you. So, the whole thing actually started way before Elizabeth Short. So it was like the fall of 1946, I believe, was when the first body was found. Woman was killed. Her throat was cut, and she was displayed in an alleyway where she could be found. Then, about 2 months after that, another body was found in a different part of town, a place called Elysian Park. And she was mostly clothed. Police still believed that the killer had been interrupted while undressing her, because all the other bodies were found in a state of undress. But she had most of her clothes on, but her top was unbuttoned and like spread apart. And then after her, and you can look all this up. Look up the werewolf killer or the lipstick killer in LA in the 1940s, and it'll bring up all this stuff. Another one was a Hispanic woman that was found, once again in an alleyway, and there was a blood trail that the police followed and found a few other pieces of evidence, but it never led them to a suspect. And then there were a couple more that I don't remember very well. Oh, well, one was found... okay, so for those of you out there that have played the game L.A. Noire, it's pretty accurate, because one of the victims was actually found at a train yard. The one was found at Elysian Park, like I said. Then there was the Hispanic woman that was found in the alleyway, and then I think there were like 2 more victims before Elizabeth. And obviously the guy was never officially caught. Alright, they had a strong suspect in Dr. George Hodel, who we do know actually did kill some women. Was he the werewolf killer, the lipstick killer, whatever? Who knows? I've always said that the other strong suspect was Ed Edwards, who was in the area at the time. And there's actually a photograph, and you can look this up, of him when he was a teenager. There's actually a picture of him with Elizabeth Short. But they can never identify the killer. I think part of that is because there was like this assumption at the time that these women were killed by their partners, spurned husbands, etc., etc. I think was the prevailing theory, and was not an accurate theory at all. They didn't, for a long time, they didn't see a connection between the victims. Until Elizabeth, actually. And by then, like, a lot of the evidence was gone, or a lot of the evidence in those cases was mishandled too. And that's not, I want to be clear here, I'm not blaming cops for this, okay? They didn't know about forensics the way that we do now. So, it was pretty common practice, for example, for police to handle certain items without gloves. For example, which would pollute that, contaminate that piece of evidence, particularly with like fingerprinting. But they didn't have fingerprinting the way that we do now either. Like now, there's technology that we can actually get fingerprints off of certain fabrics, which they did not have at the time. It's not like finding a gun. You know not to touch a gun with your bare hands because of fingerprints. Even then, they knew that. But they didn't know about the techniques that they use now to preserve crime scenes. And this is LAPD. These guys were, at the height of crime scene investigation for that time. But because they weren't aware of all of this stuff, a lot of the crime scene evidence was contaminated for later on. And as a result of that, this killer, whoever they were, was never found. However, Dr. George Hodel was a very strong suspect, so strong in fact that he had actually fled the country before a subpoena came down. This is historic fact, by the way. Like, he went to, I believe, Peru. So, all of this stuff combined, and there's still no clear suspect. Like, Hodel and Edwards are probably your best bet, but they may not have even done it. But there's no way to tell that. Like, and whatever evidence is still valid in the Elizabeth Short case has been examined and re-examined probably 100 times by now, and still not pointing in a direction. What they do know, and this is what I base my profile on, and I want to explain the profile, by the way, is what they do know is that most likely there was some kind of fascination with Man Ray. And the reason why is there was a famous art piece done by Man Ray. And if you're unfamiliar with Man Ray, he was an artist and photographer. And he did a bunch of weird, like, art pieces. And one of them was a picture of a mannequin where the top half of the body and the bottom half of the body were separated. Which, I'm taking that into account, that that's part of the profile, that this killer, whoever he was, whether it was Odell or Edwards or somebody else, saw himself as an artist. So, to his way of thinking, he wasn't committing murder, he was creating art. Because art takes sacrifice. Right? So this is my thinking when I created this particular profile. And that's what I went into, is you could hear from the way I did that story, is this somebody that saw himself as an artist. This is somebody that most likely has some kind of delusion disorder, and most likely is a narcissist, because their needs outweigh everything else, including the needs of his victim to stay alive. Now, I'm not a professional profiler. I know a lot, I read a lot, and I've learned a lot, but I'm not a professional profiler. I want to be very clear about that. It is very likely that some FBI profiler years ago came up with the same profile, but I don't know that. All I can do is go by what I know and what I can piece together, and I've always had a brain for this kind of thing. I probably should have been a cop, to be honest. But, things prevented that. And, so all I can do now is this. I can do this show. I can put profiles together. I can try and figure things out. And do these stories in the first person as if I am the killer. I know how to do that. Alright? Because I've been called a couple different things, but the one that comes to mind is functioning sociopath. What that means is I do feel, unlike your average sociopath who doesn't, they can mimic it if they're really good, but I don't feel things the way that other people do. I'm very stoic. Like, I don't register emotion the way a normal person does. Doesn't mean that I don't feel those things, it just means that you, looking from the outside, can't tell that I'm feeling those things. But because of that condition, it's always been easy for me to get into the headspace of a killer. These are things that I would never, ever do myself. but I can imagine how people could, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I created this profile. Is I kind of put myself in the shoes of the killer going by what was left behind, i.e. the body. Sorry, frog in my throat. I.e. the body, and the other evidence that was left behind that we know about, and then putting in this fascination with Man Ray and the whole art angle, and going from there. Alright, and this is something I'm going to be doing throughout this series. I'm going to put myself, as much as I can, in the place of the killer. And some of the killers that I'm going to do are people that we know about. Some of them are people we don't know about. And the next episode I do is actually going to be a 3-part thing, because it's going to have to be, because it is massive in depth and story. And that is going to be the Zodiac. I'm profiling the Zodiac. I'm going to do the story as if I am the Zodiac. I'm going to try to get into his headspace and figure out a profile for the Zodiac, part of which I already know. And I'll get into that in the next episode of Killer Voices. Until then, my pack, my tribe, peace out.
The things that were left unsaid, for all the times I found promises dead.